paper I needed to go over with you. Oh, here it is. It is called Protocols for Conditional Release Transfers. It looks pretty long. These are long protocols. I think what it says, I'll interpret it for you, is that when someone needs to be transferred to a different circuit, there has to be a good reason. What's a good reason? Family lives there, they're going to live with family, be closer to family. They'll be going to Day Springs, right? So that's a good reason, not that they just want to live in Gainesville because they have legalized pot or something. Okay. The circuit transfer should be initiated prior to notifying the courts of any change in residence. So you need to, behind the scenes, you need to make sure there's a good reason, that it's a valid reason, and that, like, if they're going to live with family, you need to call family. You need to do all that groundwork. Call mom. Are they willing to have the person there? You need to set up all that first, then get it approved by the provider. The provider has to agree to take, the other provider has to agree to take the case. Laura needs to approve it, the transfer, and then the court, then you need to ask the court. Then you make the move for the client. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, there was a question, we haven't got to violations, but actually, we'll get there. I'll talk about it when we get there. Tracking packets. So, I think most counties use email to send packets to us. I think there's 2 holdouts that are still mailing them, which is unbelievable. So, when someone has, you think it's been ordered to state hospital and they are still in the jail after 2 weeks, you need to let us know because that packet may be lost. Maybe someone forgot to do the packet. So just don't let time go by because that person's just waiting there. We can get them in actually pretty quickly. Watch for improper orders. Now, these are types of improper orders. So the court, some of the courts will just do whatever, you know. And that's hard because then we have to backtrack and get all that fixed. But these are real cases, I think, yeah. Court orders the client to fact team, even though they're not on fact team.
Check.
And fact team hasn't even interviewed them. You did. Because it was a good idea. Court orders treatment that is not available, kind of the same. Court orders client to live in the client's delusional house. That was a real case of mine. She ended up in our lobby. There was no house. It was all a delusion, and the attorney believed it without checking. Disaster. Court order to CSU when they don't meet Baker Act criteria, so that can be a debacle. Competence to proceed without going through the process, then NGI automatic. I've seen that. Like in the same order. And what did it say? It said, the person, if they are still incompetent to proceed after 6 months, then they will automatically be NGI after that. In the same order. Okay. So let us know in cases like this. We actually have legal counsel with DCF that cover these areas, and they can help with that. So you don't have to do all the work. We can help with improper orders. Coordinating return ITPs. So those are individuals that come from state hospital usually back to the jail. You want to work with the public defender and the JA to help resolve problems. Not everybody is reevaluated upon their return. Some counties will reevaluate everybody. Some counties will stipulate to the state hospital report. Usually if the public defender sees the client and agrees to the court report, they can stipulate to that. And that actually goes along with even community forensic competency restoration. Say you're doing competency restoration and you think the person's competent, you write this wonderful report, the court can stipulate to your report too. They don't have to be reevaluated. Some courts will, some courts won't. I think some courts, it depends on your reputation too. They can put you under oath and they can talk to the client and they can stipulate to your report. It depends on the court.
Depends on the attorney too.
Depends on the attorney too. That's good. Information, provide information to the courts and to the attorneys pertaining to the individual's treatment at the state hospital, jail, or community as requested. Really, this is kind of like, you should be of service to the court about information. That's why you need to know all the information about your client. Just a little warning, not everyone knows what you do. Not everyone will want your involvement. I've been to court, oh my God, Live Oak, Swanee. This guy was malingering. We had all these reports that he was malingering, but they wanted him to stay in the system. So when I went, they made me wait all day. Like they break for lunch. You're there at 9, you go all day, you break for lunch, you come back. I was afraid to go to the bathroom, they would call it while I was in the bathroom. I was like holding it all afternoon. Because I wanted to tell them, hey, we think he's malingering. But they still didn't listen. But I had my day in court. Do's and don'ts when writing your reports. I think, I don't know, simple is better, I think, for the most part. But you definitely want to fall in line with the court. Now, some courts, not too many, they actually do a check mark box of compliance or not. Some of our judges want really detailed clinical reports, some don't. So I know Meridian, we had made like a template that we use that the judges seem to be good with, but there's no actual DCF template to use, you just kind of use. I think I brought some samples of what we use, not that you have to use them, but I thought they were okay. This is a competency one, here's this is an affidavit, so you want to pass that one around. Critical functioning, interacting with the jail. Do you want to cover this one? Is this the one you covered last time? Maybe. Okay. Do you mind?
No.
I need a little break. Okay. My voice is
So, I guess all jails are different. I don't know. Some jails don't even prescribe medication. Do all your jails prescribe medication? So, I guess finding the medical staff that you need at the jail to work with, keeping an open communication with the jail staff about it, whether they're taking their medications. Our judge likes, before court, she gets an update from those two over there. With any behavior issues, medication compliance, before all their hearings. I guess that's really it. We work with our booking routine, and we pick up our clients directly from the jail when they're released, in most cases, and then we can assist in getting them, the jail will usually give us a 3 to 7 day prescription, so we can have that when they get out to try to work them into our calendar, or agency's calendars, and then working with classifications in our jail release population.
Erica, do you find that the jail has a formulary that they tend to use for patients that end up at the jail? Is there a medication formulary that the sheriff or that the jail staff sort of recommend? And
Can you touch on that?
have you seen them?
Usually whatever's cheapest.
Yeah, they do have a formulary. I think we've tried to keep on top of the formularies for all the jails, but sometimes it's impossible. I think we have a sort of a general formulary list that we try to get state hospital prescribe a similar medication so that they're not coming back to the jail. I know the state hospital is giving 30 days to the jail to use, and most of the jails they're supposed to keep folks on the same medication as they came from state hospital to the jail.
It's hard for them to do injections though.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, the jail, like when your client goes to jail or comes back from the state hospital to jail, you want to make sure that you go to the jail as soon as possible to see your client. Because you never know what's going to happen. I've been to the jail where they didn't know where the client came from. They didn't know they were from state hospital. Not your jail. Yeah. I was like, okay. Or they had their medication in their property and they weren't giving it to them. So all kind of things going on, and it's just good continuity of care if you touch base with the jail and know what's going on in the jail. Now, it's important to know how the jail is run. Classification officers, what they do, some jails don't have classification, they're smaller and they have a couple of officers or whatever. But you need to know what your jail looks like, how they're run, who does what, who has the contract for their mental health services, when their provider comes in. Most don't have a full-time psychiatrist there. The psychiatrist usually goes to different jails. Oh, well, they're here on Wednesday afternoons or whatever. So it's important to know that type of thing and who can do what. Okay. So medications. All right, so let's talk about conditional release plans. Assist the treatment facilities, jails, and court with developing conditional release plans. And I find that developing conditional release plans is kind of all over the place as far as who does it. Some courts, the forensic specialist does it. Some courts, the attorneys do everything. Some courts, the JA does it. So it just kind of depends. You definitely need input through the conditional release and what the conditions are, because you're the expert with that particular client. Okay? So even if the state hospital develops one and you think something else should be in there, you need to make that recommendation that something else needs to be in. What are the typical things in conditional releases?
Whether seeking treatment, outpatient treatment.
That they have to, not seeking. Yeah. They have to be in outpatient treatment, including what? Medications if needed. Counseling if needed. Day treatment if they qualify. Where they live.
No drugs or alcohol.
No drugs or alcohol. What else?
All the laws and rules.
Follow all the rules, all the laws. follow the rules of Day Springs.
One of the things we've incorporated though is, looking at the use of phones, electronic devices, social media. What we have found is those are all pathways to reoffending and violations. Pornography has become a big gateway. There's lots of avenues through which they end up in violation mode or become gateways to violation mode. So we have incorporated over the years, particularly with the younger ones, our new generation of forensics. We've kind of closed doors on all of these into our specific CRP because it has migrated since we started in '07. It's different now. If you look at our 2007 CRP and the one now today in Day Spring.
Now, do you have
Very different.
a statement that you require in there about social media in your CRP?
In the CRP there is, and it allows us to inspect their social media accounts.
Okay.
Allows us to inspect their phones, all electronic devices, gives us capacity to restrict those devices. Allows us to inspect them, but then it also allows us to restrict them
Okay.
if in fact we had to. That was a very tricky thing we had to get legal counsel involved in because there's some specific laws around that. But we also went after the issues around dealing with money management in terms of structuring money management, because money management was also another gateway issue into a violation mode. So as you start to look at your CRP, you have to sort of help them navigate or ease themselves back into community living, because so they manage these pitfalls that get them back into issues where they deal with conflicts and set them up for conflicts and other circumstances that violate their CRP. So, I think we've certainly learned a lot over the years, and those are some of the things that we've incorporated. So we won't accept any other CRP other than this one.
Okay.
So we immediately will turn it down. The other thing we've done is we now require a handwritten letter that has to include some things that are in their own handwriting where they acknowledge their mental illness. They have to acknowledge the need for medication. They have to acknowledge that they will take their medication and follow their doctor's orders. They also have to agree how they will handle conflict and how they will manage conflict. And it has to be in their own handwriting so the therapist can then revert back to that handwritten letter. Because oftentimes they'll come back and say,
I didn't agree.
that CRP, I didn't agree to any of that. That's all fake. And that wasn't me who signed it.
Okay.
But when it's in their own handwriting, it's indisputable. And so the therapist can refer back to it and say, well, you may not agree with the CRP, but this handwritten letter from you, there's no arguing with the handwritten letter.
Right.
So it's all in their own handwriting. So we found that to be very, very influential.
Great. Well, thank you for that. I think that brings it into, the conditional release has to have really the basic stuff, which you guys said, but also it can have things that will help the client reach success or their recovery by putting in things that are specific to the client. One of yours is social media. Another's may be what? Going to school or work. If they don't have benefits, one of the conditions must assist in the application of benefits so that they're not like, oh, well, we're not going to do that. Or if they live with mom, they must obey all of the house rules at mom's house. Or, and this is a true one, they are not allowed to go to Taco Bell. True story. Yeah, you can put that in the conditional release.
And sometimes we put no contact with victims.
No contact with the victim.
Yeah.
Make sure that all stakeholders have input to the conditional release. Intervene when necessary to resolve issues among stakeholders and ensure process moves forward in a timely manner. The gains reentry checklist, we're not going to concentrate on now. It's your job to track all the folks on conditional release that you're assigned to. We have to keep track of everybody. I remember there was a couple counties in Circuit 3 that didn't send DCF or the provider the conditional releases, and like, I think it was like 2 years later, they're like, where are these reports? And we're like, for who? And what? So, yeah, so you'll run into things like that, and that, yeah, it's bad, but it's kind of like, come on, guys, all right. But it helps to just navigate the system, know people, network with people that are working in the system. All right, now we're to violations.